Hi PWHL fans. In case you don't know, the trade deadline that was originally scheduled for March 2nd has now been moved to March 13th. It looks like it's more like 2.5 weeks away now. But I think it'll still be fun to react to this article titled Trade Targets, PWHL Trade Deadline Rapidly Approaching. Shout out to Ian Kennedy and everyone over at the Hockey News. The cover photo is of Dominika Shisheva, who I think will be traded as she's fallen out of favor in Minnesota. But let's see who they say about team needs and who some of the trade targets could be. Boston Fleet, they say secondary scoring 100%. As of late, their scoring has picked up a bit, but earlier on, their scoring was a bit of a struggle. The addition of Jill Saulnier has been excellent so far. She's fit into her role perfectly over in Boston. I talked about it before, but I expect them to deal Lauren Gable, who hasn't seen much playing time this season. I think likely we'll see a package involving her for Chloe Gerard. Minnesota Frost, a goaltender. Well, they're not wrong there. But at the same time, trading goalies in this league is going to be quite difficult. The only goalie I could expect to see trade would probably be Klara Peslova, who hasn't seen a lot of playing time over in Boston. But at the same time, I don't think Boston would want to trade a goalie because then they'd only have 2 goalies on their active roster. And I know Minnesota is likely not going to make a trade for one of these players. If you don't know, Minnesota only has Maddie Rooney and Nicole Hensley signed to the active roster, as their third goalie, Lucy Morgan, is on the reserve list. I guess we'll have to see what they do there. Montreal Victoire, they say depth forward support. Now, to me, this seems like they had just had to say something, so that's what they said. If I'm Danielle Sauvageau, I'm not making a trade right now. With Catherine Dubois recently going on LTIR, they only have 12 forwards on the active roster. And they currently have 8 D, so I would think possibly maybe Amanda Boulier or Anna Shelbin get dealt. I could see one of those players getting dealt for someone like Dominika Shisheva, but we'll have to wait and see. For the New York Sirens, secondary scoring has definitely been a massive struggle recently. I already mentioned them possibly making a deal for Lauren Gable, and someone like Elizabeth Giguère hasn't really fit in, so I don't know how much that will fix their scoring, but something definitely needs to be changed there or else they could be going for the gold plan again. Which, I don't know if that will be a massive loss for them because then they may end up with Abby Murphy, who I know every team will want to have. Now for the Ottawa Charge, on paper their lineup does look quite good. Right now, with Ashton Bell being injured, they have 0 right-handed D on their roster. And they also haven't been able to score a lot of goals, but Teresa Vanishova is leading their depth scoring with 9 currently on the season. Overall, I think the whole roster needs a bit of help because they can't rely on Mashmeyer to save the game for them every time, even though she's been excellent for them. Toronto Scepters with defensive depth, yes, because they currently only have 6 on the roster. Someone like Noemi Neubauer hasn't been used much, so maybe they'll look to deal her. But all in all, I'm curious to see the trade targets. Let's see what they have to say. First up is Dominika Shisheva, who was on the cover photo, so I knew she'd be on this list. I don't know exactly what Boston and New York would give up, but I could see Ottawa and Montreal giving up something for her. For Ottawa, I think it's possible they give up D, possibly Stephanie Markowski, while Minnesota can improve their defense. Chloe Gerard is definitely most likely going to be dealt. I already talked about her going to Boston, and yes, she will get to reunite with Lena Mueller because they played together in Northeastern University. I don't know if Montreal necessarily has the assets to acquire her or if they want to acquire her. Certainly think Boston can improve her. They already fixed Jill Saulnier, who used to play for New York. Maybe they can do that with Aurora too, just put her in the right situation. Now, Amanda Boulier was traded last season from Ottawa to Montreal for Teresa Vanishova. I can definitely see her being dealt since they still have Dominika Lásková, who hasn't played for a very long time, dealing with an injury. I don't necessarily know if she'd be traded to New York, but I can see Toronto since they only have 6 D right now. Could they possibly deal her for someone like Noemi Neubauer and fix her? I also mentioned possibly them dealing her to Minnesota for Dominika Shisheva. Possibly they even send her back to Ottawa. I think they could improve their speed on defense. And add a right-hander. Possibly see her dealt for Stephanie Markowski if possible. We'll see. But I think Montreal, if they were to make a deal, they'd look to add another forward right now, so maybe not that. Elizabeth Giguère, yes, they need to get rid of her. I don't necessarily know if Montreal would look to acquire her right now, but I can definitely see Boston looking to acquire her. It's possible they deal her in the package involving Lauren Gable and Chloe Gerard if that deal goes down. If Boston were to make this trade, I think they'll either add someone like Lexia Gia or Teresa Schaffsal to the deal. I'd say it's more likely at this point that a Gia gets dealt. Schaffsal has really picked up her game recently. I don't think Boston wants to move on from her just yet. Klara Himlerova. I still think Minnesota made a mistake drafting her instead of Abby Boreen, but I don't think they should trade her just yet. I think she's still too young. If she were to get dealt though, I think it's likely possibly she goes to Ottawa, just reunite her with Carla McLeod. That seems like more of a trade just to make a trade. I don't know if that will happen just yet, maybe in the off-season or at the deadline next season. Klara Pestarova, I don't know exactly how you trade her, but it's possible they do look to deal her, or else she may not re-sign. Toronto does have some increased concerns, but I don't know how they acquire her since they already have 3 goalies signed. I don't think they'd be looking to get rid of Campbell or Kirk, or Jackson either, given that she's a fan favorite. I did talk about it's likely Minnesota goes for her, but I don't know what they give up. I know they don't want to give up a goalie, it's most likely, and Boston doesn't want to only have 2 goalies. Jamie Lee Rattray. At this point, it does look like she may not be in the team's future plans. Now, she is on a 3-year deal, and in a previous article, they did talk about how expansion rules can consist of that teams must expose a 3-year deal player that was initially signed in year 1. Trading her, though, would definitely shake things up a lot. I can definitely see Ottawa working hard to get her, given that she is from Ottawa. Possibly they maybe deal her for someone like Gabby Hughes. But Ottawa does seem to have a lot of centers currently on their roster, so maybe they could add a wing player. But Rattray still is an alternate captain in Boston, so moving on from her would definitely be a hit to the team. Now, I can definitely see Ottawa looking to trade Anna Meixner to shake things up, although I don't know if the teams that would want her certainly have the assets to acquire her. I could possibly see her being traded to Minnesota for someone like Shishva, but I don't know, we'll have to see. Noemi Neubarova, yes, she hasn't really been used much in Toronto. I think she needs to be put into a bigger role with playmakers so she can really showcase her talent. In Toronto, that just hasn't been the case. I think it's very possible she goes to Ottawa, reunite her with Carla McLeod, she can play more up in the lineup. I already feel like they did seem to turn Victoria Bach's career around after she was getting only 4th line minutes with Toronto. In a previous article, they did talk about Neubarova getting traded for someone like Zoe Boyd, but I think it's more likely she gets traded for someone like Stephanie Markowski, given the fact that they're both restricted free agents, while Boyd is unrestricted. Maggie Connors has only gotten 4th line ice time this season after playing up and down the lineup last season. If they were to trade her to New York, I could see them possibly getting Brooke Hobson in return, get a 7th D. I don't know if Brooke Hobson is in New York's future plans. Or possibly even to Ottawa, maybe they get Zoe Boyd for Maggie Connors, add a 7th D to Toronto's roster, add a versatile player to Ottawa's lineup. We certainly think Ottawa could possibly fix her. Lauren Gable, I've already talked about a lot. I'm sure she's going to go to New York. I doubt she'll go anywhere else. Anna Shelbin, I already talked about possibly her getting dealt for someone like Denisa Shisheva, but I think it's also possible they look to deal her to Ottawa given their lack of right-handed D and reunite her with her fiancé, Ronia Savalainen. Earlier in the season, I was thinking possibly she gets dealt for someone like Cheyenne Darkangelo, the package surrounding those two. But I don't know if Ottawa is looking to trade Darkangelo at this point. She's been excellent for them this season, at least for her role. But with Darkangelo going to Montreal, you also reunite her with her girlfriend Elaine Chuli. If this trade were to go down, there'd definitely be multiple players involved, but I don't think that Ottawa would look to do that. Now, Jade Downey Landry this season has gotten a bit of a smaller role and hasn't produced as much on the score sheet like she did last season. I could see her being dealt to Boston in the package involving Orard and Gable. Perhaps they look to deal her to Montreal given that she is from Quebec. Zoe Boyd, yeah, she's spent pretty much all season playing as the 7th D for Ottawa. She is a fan favorite, but I think it's likely maybe they move on from her and try to add more scoring to their lineup. I don't know if they acquire another D by trading her, but I think it's likely she does go to Toronto and help improve their defensive depth. For Brooke Hobson, I love the way that she does play, and they are right here about her being out of position from time to time. I love the speed that she plays at, but maybe they want to move on from her. I don't know where they'd look to deal her, possibly Minnesota or Boston. If they do trade her though, they have to acquire another left-handed D to play on the 3rd pair. So if they were to do a D for D trade, if they deal her to Minnesota, possibly Melissa Channel goes the other way. Or if they were to deal her to Boston, possibly Jessica DiGirolamo, I'm not entirely sure. But I think they do want to add another scorer, so possibly we see them make more than just one deal at the deadline. And it looks like that's the end of the article. If you enjoyed this reaction, don't forget to leave it a like. Also, leave a comment below on who you think should get dealt at this trade deadline. And if you want to see more reactions to articles like this, please subscribe to the channel. That's the best way to show your support. Anyways, I did have a lot of fun with this reaction. I hope to do this again in the near future, but until now, I'll see you next time.